My name is Myra Goodwin and I am 32 years old. 3 years ago, my father looked my pregnant sister directly in the eyes and spoke 6 words that shattered our family beyond recognition. "You are no daughter of mine." My mother stepped to the front door and pointed silently toward the driveway, and I stood there, motionless, watching my 23-year-old sister walk out into the pouring rain carrying nothing but a backpack and an ultrasound photo. I took her in that very same night. For 3 years, I worked double shifts, changed diapers at 2 in the morning, and watched my sister rebuild herself from absolute nothing. My parents never once called. Not a single time. But what unfolded at my nephew's 3rd birthday party, what my parents discovered about who his father truly was, that is something no one in our family will ever forget. Welcome back to Revenge Narrative Stories, where people face impossible choices and find the courage to stand their ground. If you are new here, this channel is all about family stories that push you to your limits and quietly restore your faith. Drop a comment with your thoughts as you listen, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a story. Josie called me at 11:14 on a Wednesday night. Rain was hammering the gutters outside my apartment. Her voice came through in fragments, broken apart by static and something far worse. Crying. The kind of crying that sounds like it has been going on for hours without pause. I opened the front door before she even finished her sentence. She was standing on the porch, completely soaked, holding a backpack in one hand and an ultrasound photo in the other. Her mascara had streaked down both cheeks in 2 dark lines. She looked like a person who had just been told she no longer existed in this world. I did not ask what happened. I pulled her inside. I grabbed a towel from the bathroom. I put the kettle on. Some things do not need questions. They need warmth and a locked door. She settled onto my couch and pressed the ultrasound photo flat against her knee. Her hands were trembling. "Dad said I am not his daughter anymore." Mom opened the door and told me to leave. I looked at my sister, 23 years old, 17 weeks pregnant, sitting on my secondhand couch in soaking wet jeans, clutching a grainy black and white image of a baby no larger than a pear. I had seen my parents be rigid. I had seen them turn cold after bad report cards, missed curfews, and the time Josie dyed her hair blue in 11th grade. But I had never once seen them discard their own child like something disposable. "You are staying here," I said. That was not a question either. She nodded. She did not thank me. She did not need to. We were sisters, and sisters do not keep score when the house is burning down around them. What I did not know yet was that the reason behind my sister's silence about the father would turn out to be the very thing that brought our parents to their knees. She had not even told me the most difficult part yet. The Goodwin family carried a reputation in our town, and my mother protected it the way other people protect their most precious possessions. We were members of Grace Fellowship Church. We sat in the 3rd pew from the front, left side, every single Sunday for 26 years. My father, Frank, served as a deacon. My mother, Deborah, chaired the women's ministry. We brought casseroles to funerals and appeared at every potluck with perfectly matching Tupperware. The pastor of Grace Fellowship was a man named Greg Harmon, 63 years old, silver-haired, with a firm handshake. He had led that congregation for a quarter-century, and most people in town trusted his voice more than their own instincts. His son Ethan was everything a church family could admire. Eagle Scout, engineering scholarship, studying abroad in Germany at a prestigious university. The golden boy who did everything correctly and never once caused a headline. My family had 2 daughters. I was the responsible one. A degree in physical therapy. Student loans paid down to the final $4,000. Quiet, reliable, nearly invisible. Josie was the other kind. Creative, warm, and beautifully impulsive. She struggled through her first year of college, changed her major twice, and laughed louder than anyone else in the room. Our mother called her the project. There was an unspoken rule in the Goodwin household, and it sat at the center of every decision we ever made. Appearance over truth. Image over feeling. My mother had a phrase she reached for whenever one of us got too loud, too honest, or too real. "People are watching, Myra. People are always watching." Josie had been seeing someone in secret for over a year. She never told me. She never told anyone. And the reason she kept it so carefully hidden had everything to do with whose son he was. It happened at Sunday dinner, 2 weeks before the night Josie appeared at my door. All of us were present. Frank at the head of the table, Deborah at the opposite end, me along one side, Josie across from me. Aunt Carol and Uncle Pete filled the remaining chairs, sipping sweet tea and performing the ritual of normalcy. Josie set her fork down between the mashed potatoes and the roast. She drew a slow breath. "I need to tell you all something." The table fell completely silent. I could hear the kitchen clock ticking. "I am pregnant." My father rose from his chair, so swiftly it struck the wall behind him. His face turned the deep crimson of raw meat. "You're no daughter of mine." Just like that. No pause, no question, no who or when or are you all right. Just those words and a chair slamming into drywall. My mother's reaction came slower, which somehow made it worse. She folded her napkin. She placed it deliberately beside her plate. She rose, walked calmly to the front door, opened it, and pointed toward the driveway. "Get out of my house." Josie looked at me. I looked at our mother. "Mom, she is your daughter." "Not anymore." Aunt Carol whispered something into Uncle Pete's ear. I could already see her eyes cataloging every detail for later distribution. My mother reached across the table and removed the pearl earrings from Josie's ears, a family heirloom passed down through 3 generations, and said, "These belong to Goodwin women who know how to conduct themselves." I grabbed my coat. I grabbed my sister. We walked out past the untouched casserole dish sitting perfectly presented on the counter, while the family disintegrated around it. I did not know it then, but walking out of that house beside my sister was the last time I would speak to my parents for 2 full years. My mother called at 7:15 the following morning. Her voice was measured and carefully rehearsed. "Bring her back to apologize and we can discuss this as a family." I was standing in my kitchen preparing oatmeal for Josie, who was still asleep on the couch with her shoes still on. "She has nothing to apologize for." Silence stretched across the line. "Then, if you choose her side, do not expect anything from us either. No money, no Thanksgiving, nothing at all. Then I suppose we will figure things out on our own." I ended the call. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my bank account on my phone. $14,211. That was everything standing between us and collapse. I ran the numbers carefully. Rent, groceries, prenatal vitamins, copays, diapers. 14,000 would carry us 8 months if we were disciplined, perhaps 9. I called my supervisor at the hospital and requested additional shifts, Tuesdays and Saturdays on top of my existing schedule. She agreed without asking why. Good supervisors do that. That evening, my father sent a text, addressed to me alone. "Talk some sense into your sister." I read it 3 times. Then I typed back, "Talk some sense into your wife." He never responded. Not that night. Not ever. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the ceiling. My savings were slim. My schedule was about to double. My social life, already modest, was about to vanish completely. And the sister sleeping on my couch had still not told me who the father of her baby was. I was not choosing between my sister and my parents. My parents had already made that choice on behalf of all of us. I was simply the one who refused to look away and pretend it had not happened. The first 3 months settled into the hardest kind of quiet. Josie managed the morning sickness by keeping a sleeve of crackers beside the couch at all times. I managed the exhaustion by drinking coffee that grew stronger with each passing week. We did not speak about our parents. We did not speak about the father. We talked about grocery lists, doctor's appointments, and whether we could afford the name-brand prenatal vitamins or needed to settle for generic. The town, of course, spoke for us. I crossed paths with Margaret Patterson at the grocery store on a Thursday afternoon. She had been a longtime member of Grace Fellowship and had known our family since I was still in diapers. She spotted Josie's belly from 30 feet away. She turned her cart around and walked in the opposite direction without uttering a single word. 2 weeks later, Aunt Carol appeared at my apartment door holding a white ceramic casserole dish, chipped rim, my mother's signature vessel. "From your mother. She still loves you girls." Inside was tuna casserole seasoned with exactly the right amount of dill and exactly the wrong amount of genuine concern. Carol stayed for 45 minutes. She complimented my curtains. She asked how Josie was holding up. She wanted to know if there was a man in the picture. I told her Josie was fine. I told her we did not need anything. I walked her to the door. She reported back to my mother that same night. Josie was showing. No ring. No man around. My mother's response, relayed through the family grapevine. She made her bed. I placed the casserole in the refrigerator. I did not eat it. I did not throw it away either. It sat on the middle shelf for 9 days before I finally scraped it into the trash. What Aunt Carol failed to mention in her report, because it never occurred to her to ask, was the name of the father. And if she had thought to ask, everything would have unfolded very differently. I heard about the sermon from Dr. Patrice Coleman, my colleague at the hospital. Patrice was 50 years old, a physical therapist like me, and the only person in town who never spoke about other people's business unless it genuinely mattered. She found me in the break room on a Monday morning and pulled the door closed behind her. You need to know what happened at Grace Fellowship yesterday. Pastor Greg Harmon had stood at the pulpit and delivered what the congregation would later refer to as a teaching moment. He used a hypothetical, a young woman, a family, a pregnancy that had brought shame upon them. He never spoke Josie's name. He did not need to. Every person seated in that sanctuary understood precisely who he was describing. When a young woman strays from the path her family has laid out for her, he had declared, the consequences ripple through generations. My mother sat in the front pew and nodded along. Patrice told me she got up and left. She was the only one who did. I stood up, picked up my purse, and walked straight out the side door. Nobody followed me. I listened to every word she said. I did not cry. I did not call the church. I did not write a letter. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Then I went back to work. That evening, I picked up Josie's phone to plug it in while she napped. The screen lit up with a notification, a contact saved as just the letter E, with a message preview visible before the screen locked. I think about him every day. I set the phone back down. I did not unlock it. But I filed that letter away in the part of my mind that quietly catalogs things I am not yet supposed to know. Patrice had said something that stayed with me long afterward. Greg Harmon has been standing at that pulpit for 25 years. I wonder how many people he has judged while his own house was not in order. I did not understand what she meant. Not then. But I would. Josie was 32 weeks along when her blood pressure spiked. I came home from a Saturday shift and found her sitting on the bathroom floor, gripping the edge of the sink with both hands. Her face was deeply flushed. Her breathing was shallow and uneven. I checked her pulse. Then I checked it again. 158/98. I am a physical therapist, not an obstetrician, but I know precisely what those numbers mean. When a woman is 8 months pregnant, they mean get in the car right now. I drove 12 minutes to the emergency room. Josie gripped the dashboard the entire way. Neither of us spoke a word. The only sounds were the rain striking the windshield and the turn signal clicking at every intersection. The doctor on duty stabilized her within 2 hours. Gestational hypertension, not preeclampsia, not yet, but close enough to frighten everyone in that room. The instructions were unambiguous. Bed rest, weekly monitoring, no more part-time shifts at the diner where she had been working 3 days a week. That meant I was now the sole income. No backup. No safety net. No casserole dish arriving with a check tucked inside. I sat in the hallway outside Josie's room and pulled out my phone. I typed a message to my mother. Josie is in the hospital. Blood pressure complications. I pressed send. The message was read at 9:41 in the evening. I watched the small blue checkmark appear beneath the text. Read. No reply. Not a question. Not a prayer emoji. Not a single word. I stared at that checkmark for 5 full minutes. My mother had read that her pregnant daughter was in the hospital and chosen complete silence. The baby arrived 6 weeks later, and when he did, there was only one person in that delivery room holding my sister's hand. Me. If you have ever been the person your family called when everything fell apart and then watched those same people pretend you no longer exist, this story may feel deeply personal. Stay with me, because what happens next changed everything. For my sister, for me, and for the family that discarded us both. Drop a like if you are still here. Micah James Goodwin was born on a Tuesday morning at 6:47. 6 pounds, 11 ounces. healthy lungs, a full head of curly brown hair that did not come from our side of the family. Josie held him against her chest and wept the kind of tears that belong to someone who has been frightened for a very long time and has finally been handed a reason to stop. I stood beside the bed and watched my sister become a mother. In a room without flowers, without family photographs propped on the windowsill, without a father pacing the hallway outside. The nurse asked me to help with some paperwork. She reached the emergency contact section and paused. "Who should we list besides you?" "Just me." She looked up briefly. She did not ask a follow-up question. She simply wrote my name in both lines. Dr. Patrice stopped by after her shift with a stuffed bear she had picked up from the gift shop downstairs. She held Micah for 3 minutes and said quietly, "He has good hands. Strong grip." I walked down to the hospital gift shop and bought the softest blanket they carried. Yellow. $12. It was not much, but it was the very first thing I ever purchased for my nephew, and that made it matter. That evening, Josie sat propped up in the hospital bed with Micah sleeping soundly against her chest. She looked at me and said softly, "I am so sorry he does not have more people." I pulled my chair closer to the bed. "He has us. That is enough." She asked me not to post anything on social media. "Please. I do not want them to know." The way she said them told me she was not speaking only about our parents. There was someone else she was keeping Micah from. Someone particular. The first year moved in a blur of formula and exhaustion and small, ordinary miracles. Micah smiled for the first time at 8 weeks, a lopsided gummy grin that made Josie laugh so hard she spilled her coffee. His first tooth arrived at 5 months. His first word was my, which was his version of Myra. I am not ashamed to say I stood in the kitchen and cried when he said it. Josie passed her CNA exam in the spring. She began working 3 days a week at Meadowbrook, the nursing home on the east side of town. We divided childcare like a precise equation. I took mornings. She took evenings. Weekends we traded based on whoever had slept more the previous night, which was usually neither of us. My supervisor at the hospital offered me a promotion in September. Lead physical therapist at a larger facility 90 minutes north. Better pay, better title, better prospects in every way except the part where I would have to leave Josie and Micah behind. I said no. I told her I was not available right now. She did not press further. A colleague named Derek asked me to dinner the following week. I told him the same thing. He did not ask again. By December, my savings had fallen from $14,000 to $3,200, but we were managing. The arithmetic was tight, but it held. Josie covered groceries. I covered rent and daycare. We split utilities straight down the middle. Thanksgiving was just the 3 of us. Josie roasted a small turkey. Micah sat in his high chair, smearing sweet potatoes enthusiastically across his face. It was the quietest Thanksgiving I had ever experienced, and somehow the most complete. Josie still had not told me who Micah's father was. I did not push. But in the spring, I found something that told me everything. Something shifted around Micah's first birthday. And it happened so quietly I almost missed it entirely. People in town began speaking differently. At the hospital, Mrs. Garza, one of my regular patients, brought it up while I worked on her shoulder. "I heard your sister is over at Meadowbrook. My aunt says she is absolutely wonderful with the residents." She paused briefly. "And I heard what happened with your parents. I just want you to know that not everyone agrees with what they did." Dr. Patrice noticed it as well. She pulled me aside after a staff meeting and said, "The narrative is shifting. People see you working double shifts and raising that child. They see your parents sitting in church every Sunday acting as though nothing ever happened. The math is no longer adding up for people." At the coffee shop on Main Street, the barista handed me my latte and said, "Your sister is one of the finest CNAs at Meadowbrook. My grandmother absolutely adores her. Please tell Josie I said thank you." I drove home that afternoon turning over something Patrice had once told me. Image only holds together if nobody stops to check the receipts. My father was beginning to feel it. At the hardware store, an old friend from the Rotary Club clapped him on the shoulder and asked cheerfully, "How is your grandbaby doing, Frank?" My father froze, changed the subject, and talked about the weather for 6 unbroken minutes. My mother felt it at the church potluck. A new family had recently joined Grace Fellowship, and the wife, warm, friendly, entirely unaware of the history, asked brightly, "Oh, I did not realize you had two daughters. Where's the other one?" My mother's smile fractured down the center like a plate dropped on tile. I crossed paths with Pastor Greg at the grocery store. He nodded. I nodded back. No words passed between us, but I noticed his hands were trembling as he gripped his shopping cart. Micah was 14 months old when I began noticing things I could not quite explain. His hair had thickened into tight brown curls that bounced with every step he took. His jawline was beginning to define itself, square and resolute in a way that resembled no Goodwin I had ever known. We are fair-haired people, sandy blonde, with fine, delicate features. Josie and I both inherited our mother's coloring in that regard. But Micah's face belonged to someone else entirely. Someone with dark curls and a broad, confident jaw. I kept the thought quietly to myself. It was not my place to pry. Josie would tell me when she was ready. But then there was the phone. One evening while Josie was giving Micah a bath, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a notification, a contact saved simply as E. The message preview revealed 6 words before the screen went dark. I think about him every day. I turned the phone face down. I did not unlock it. I did not read further. The following morning, Josie was quieter than usual. She poured her coffee without a word and sat across from me at the kitchen table, while Micah played with plastic blocks on the floor. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always. Do you think a person can love someone and still keep them away, because telling them the truth would ruin their life?" I set my mug down carefully. I studied my sister's face. She was not asking a hypothetical question. She was asking for permission. "I think that depends entirely on whose life you are really trying to protect," I said. "Theirs or yours?" She went quiet. She picked Micah up and carried him to his room. She did not raise the subject again. 2 months later, I found the answer to that question inside my sister's nightstand drawer. It was a Wednesday afternoon in April. Josie was at work. Micah was at daycare. I was putting away laundry in her room when the nightstand drawer stuck. I pulled harder. It jerked open, and something slid forward from beneath a stack of old receipts. A letter, handwritten in blue ink on white paper. 3 pages folded together, so many times the creases had gone nearly transparent. The edges were worn soft from handling, as though someone had opened and refolded it dozens upon dozens of times. My hands began trembling before I read the first word. I knew I should not read it. I knew it was not mine to read. I read it anyway. "Dear Ethan." 2 words, and the entire floor shifted beneath me. "Dear Ethan, I know you are in Germany, and I know your father told you not to contact me. I know you believe I moved on. I did not move on. I am 17 weeks pregnant, and the baby is yours." I sat down slowly on the edge of Josie's bed. The room was perfectly still. I could hear the washing machine running in the next room, a low mechanical hum that had absolutely nothing to do with the earthquake occurring inside my chest. Ethan. Ethan Harmon. Pastor Greg Harmon's son. The letter continued. "I am not going to send this letter, because if I do, you will come home. And if you come home, your father will find out. And if your father finds out, he will destroy you the way my parents destroyed me." 3 pages. Blue ink. Creased and refolded until the paper felt as soft as cloth. My sister had written her baby's father's name 60 times and never once put a stamp on the envelope. I placed the letter back precisely where I had found it. I closed the drawer. I sat on the edge of my sister's bed for a long time without moving, and then I knew exactly what I needed to do. That evening, Micah was asleep. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock in the living room. I sat across from Josie at the kitchen table with 2 cups of tea resting between us. "I found the letter," I said. "The one to Ethan Harmon." The color drained from her face like water emptying from a sink. White, then red. Then the particular expression that surfaces when a secret carried for 18 months is suddenly exposed to open air. "Myra, I can explain." "You do not need to explain. You need to tell me the truth." And she did. All of it. Josie and Ethan had been together since her sophomore year of college. Secret, intentional, carefully hidden from both families, because they both understood what would happen the moment anyone found out. Pastor Greg had warned Ethan against pursuing her. The Goodwin girl is trouble. She is not serious enough for you. When Ethan received the engineering scholarship to study in Munich, Pastor Greg went through his son's phone, deleted Josie's number, altered his contact information, and told Ethan that Josie had moved on and was already seeing someone else. A clean, efficient, devastating lie. Josie discovered the pregnancy 2 months after Ethan left the country. She wrote the letter. She never sent it. If his father finds out, he will force Ethan to choose. And Ethan will choose me. And then he will lose his scholarship, his career, everything. I looked steadily at my sister. 18 months of silence. 18 months of protecting a man who did not even know he had a son. Josie, Ethan has a son. He deserves to know that. I know. Her voice broke apart. I have known for 16 months. I simply did not know how to undo what I had already done. The letter lay on the table between us, blue ink catching the kitchen light. I told my sister I would find him. And I meant every word. I began searching the very next morning. LinkedIn was the obvious first step. Ethan Harmon, structural engineer, last active 2 months prior. Employment listed at a civil engineering firm in Munich, Germany. A profile photograph. A man with brown curly hair and Micah's exact jawline. I stared at that photograph for a long time. It was like looking at my nephew 25 years into the future. I composed a message. I kept it short and entirely factual. No drama, no guilt, no accusations. Ethan, this is Myra Goodwin, Josie's sister. There is something you need to know. Please call me. 3 days passed. Nothing. I checked the message status. Read, but not answered. I understood his hesitation. A message from an ex-girlfriend's sister after 2 years of complete silence is not something a person opens with any enthusiasm. I tried once more. This time I added a single line. It is about a child. A response arrived within 2 hours. What child? I called him that same night. I told him everything. Josie's the pregnancy, the birth, Micah, his curly hair, his strong hands, the 14 months of life that had already passed him by. Silence fell on the other end of the line. I could hear traffic in the background. German traffic. A world away. Then I am coming home. Your father does not know. I do not care what my father knows. Ethan, if you come back, this entire town will find out. Everyone will know. Good. Before we ended the call, he told me something that made my hands go completely cold. 6 months after leaving for Germany, he had attempted to contact Josie. He had called his father to ask for her number. Pastor Greg told him Josie had moved on and was seeing someone new. My father lied to me, Ethan said. My father took my son away from me before he was even born. 6 weeks later, I picked Ethan Harmon up from the regional airport 45 minutes east of town. Josie had wanted to come. She had changed her outfit 3 times that morning, then sat on the edge of the bathtub and wept. I cannot do it. What if he hates me for keeping this from him? He flew 9 hours to be here, I said. He does not hate you. In the car, Ethan was silent. He kept his hands resting on his knees and stared out the window at the flat green fields and familiar church steeples he had left behind 2 years ago. He did not look like a man returning home. He looked like a man preparing for battle. What does he look like? He asked. He has your hair, I said. And your jaw. And his mother's stubbornness. He almost smiled. Almost. We pulled into the parking lot of my apartment complex. Josie was standing in the doorway with Micah balanced on her hip. He was 20 months old, wearing a green shirt with a dinosaur printed across the front. His curly hair caught the afternoon sunlight. Ethan stepped out of the car. He stood still for a moment, staring at the doorway. Then he walked forward, slowly at first, then faster. Micah studied this stranger with the same hair and the same jaw and said simply hi. Ethan knelt down. Tears fell onto the pavement. Josie knelt beside him. They held the baby between them, and the 3 of them formed a shape I had been holding open for 18 months. I slipped back into the kitchen. I watched through the window. I cried, but I did it quietly, because that is what I do. I hold the door open, and then I step aside. Josie unfolded the crumpled letter from the nightstand drawer. Blue ink, 3 pages. She placed it in Ethan's hands. He read the final line aloud. I named him Micah. It means who is like God. Because I needed to believe that someone was watching over us. The months that followed were not a fairy tale. Fairy tales conveniently skip the parts where trust has to be rebuilt entirely from scratch. Ethan found work at a construction firm 40 minutes south of town. He rented a small apartment near mine, close enough that Josie could walk over when she needed to, far enough that neither of them had to pretend everything was resolved when it was not. They attended couples counseling on Thursday evenings. I watched Micah on those nights. There were arguments, quiet ones for the most part. Josie was angry that Ethan had not tried harder to reach her. Ethan was angry that Josie had chosen silence over a single phone call. Both of them carried deep anger toward Pastor Greg. But anger at a parent is a complicated kind of fire. It burns and warms at the very same time. By the 3rd month, Micah was calling Ethan Daddy. That single word did something visible to Ethan's posture. He stood straighter. He arrived earlier. He stayed later. Josie enrolled in a nursing program at the community college, evening classes 3 nights a week. Ethan handled bedtime on those nights with a level of determination that bordered on military precision. Bath at 7, story at 7:30, lights out at 8. He never deviated. I finally took my colleague Derek up on that offer of coffee. Just coffee. 35 minutes at the cafe on Elm Street. It was the first thing I had done purely for myself in 2 years. Micah drew his first family portrait on the back of a diner placemat. 3 stick figures, one tall with wild hair labeled Myra, one with a ponytail labeled Josie, one very small with what appeared to be a cape labeled Micah. No 4th figure. No grandparents. Just the 3 people who had actually shown up. Aunt Carol ran into Josie and Ethan at the grocery store the following week. Josie did not introduce him. Carol stared at his curly hair all the way to the checkout line. Micah's 2nd birthday was small and exactly right. We held it in my apartment with streamers taped to the ceiling and a cake Josie baked from scratch, chocolate with blue frosting, because Micah had recently determined that blue was the only acceptable color in existence. The guest list was deliberately short. Dr. Patrice brought a toy stethoscope. Garrett, a friend from Ethan's construction crew, arrived with a plastic hard hat. 2 daycare families came with their children. And for 90 minutes, the apartment sounded like a playground during a full sugar rush. After the candles were blown out and the cake was thoroughly demolished, Ethan knelt in the kitchen doorway with a small ring box in his hand. It was not a diamond. It was a slender silver band with a tiny sapphire, the kind of ring that says I chose this with intention, not with a credit card. I should have been here from the very beginning, he said. I am here now. And I am not leaving. Josie said yes before he finished the sentence. Dr. Patrice leaned over to me and whispered, You built this, you know. All of this. I shook my head. Josie built it. I just held the door open. That evening, after the guests had gone and the wrapping paper had been stuffed into trash bags, I noticed something new on the refrigerator. Micah had drawn an updated version of his family portrait. This one contained 4 stick figures. The 4th was tall with scribbled curly hair. He had labeled it in orange crayon with a single word. Daddy. Still no grandparents in the picture. Just the 4 of us. For 2 years I had been bracing myself for the next disaster. And for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder if maybe the disasters were finished. They were not. 3 months before Micah's 3rd birthday, Aunt Carol called me for the first time in over a year. And the words she spoke made my stomach drop immediately. If you have ever watched someone rebuild their life from nothing, you understand precisely how fragile that piece can be. And you know how quickly the people who originally destroyed it can reappear, wanting credit. If you are wondering what happens when my parents come back, stay with me. And if this story is landing close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Honey, your parents miss you. That was how Aunt Carol opened the conversation. No hello. No how are you. Just 5 words dipped in syrup and served alongside a generous portion of guilt. They have had my number for 2 years, Aunt Carol. Your mother cries every single night, Myra. Your father cannot sleep. I leaned against the kitchen counter and closed my eyes. I am sorry to hear that. But they know where I live. They know my number. They have known both things since the night they pushed Josie out the door. Carol pivoted smoothly. Your mother heard that Josie is doing well. That she has a wonderful man in her life. She wants to meet the baby. There it was. Not, she wants to apologize. Not, she knows she was wrong. Not even, she misses her daughter. She wants to meet the baby now that the scandal has arrived at a tidy, presentable ending. If Mom wants to speak with us, she can call us herself. She is afraid you will hang up. Then she knows exactly how Josie felt when she texted from the hospital and nobody answered. Carol fell quiet for a moment. Then she revealed the real reason for the call. People at church keep asking about the baby, Myra. Your father does not know what to say when they inquire about his grandchild. I almost laughed. Almost. Tell Dad he can say exactly what he said 3 years ago. That she is no daughter of his. Problem solved. Carol ended the call shortly after. I stood in the kitchen staring at the phone. The thing about silence is that it only functions as punishment when the other person actually cares. My parents had spent 2 full years not caring. Now that the story had shifted into something more flattering, they wanted back inside the narrative. I was not certain I wanted them anywhere near it. My mother arrived at my apartment on a Saturday morning without warning. She stood on the porch holding a white ceramic casserole dish in both hands. Same style. Same chipped rim. Her hands were visibly trembling. Her hair was grayer than I remembered, pulled back in a clip that appeared to have been fastened in a hurry. She looked considerably smaller standing on my porch than she had ever looked standing in her own kitchen. For one moment, one brief, unguarded moment, I saw my mother clearly. A frightened woman approaching 60, who had lost both her daughters and had no idea how to say so. Then she opened her mouth. I just want things to go back to normal. I want my girls back. Normal, I said. Was that when you pushed your pregnant daughter out into the rain? I was angry. Your father was angry. We said things we did not mean. You meant every single word, Mom. And then you allowed Pastor Harmon to use Josie as a sermon illustration. You sat in the front pew and nodded along. Her jaw tightened. Greg was only trying to help. He cares deeply about this family. Pastor Harmon does not care about this family. I kept my voice completely level. Every word measured and deliberate. And when you find out why, you are going to wish you had come here far sooner. She blinked. She did not understand what I meant, but the words settled somewhere inside her, because her expression shifted, from defensive to uncertain. She set the casserole dish on the counter and left without another word. I stood in the kitchen staring at that dish. Same white ceramic. Same chipped rim. The same performance of love that never quite made it past the surface. Ethan told his father on a Tuesday afternoon. He drove to Grace Fellowship Church, parked in the visitor lot, and walked into the office where Pastor Greg Harmon had counseled families and led prayer groups for 25 years. I was not present for the conversation. Ethan described it to me afterward, sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of water he never once touched. I told him everything, Ethan said. I told him Josie and I have been together since college. That Micah is my son. That he is 2.5 years old. Pastor Greg's reaction arrived in distinct stages. Disbelief came first. His face went completely slack. Then came rage. He rose from behind his desk and pointed squarely at Ethan. You should have told me. You made certain I could not, Ethan said. You deleted her number. You told me she had moved on and was seeing someone else. I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. Greg lowered himself slowly back into his chair. The wood creaked beneath him. He was silent for what Ethan described as the longest minute of his entire life. Then he leaned forward and said quietly, If this gets out, it will destroy this church. Ethan stood. It is not getting out, Dad. It is already out. Your grandson has been alive for over 2 years. He has your chin and my hair and Josie's laugh. He is a real person, not a scandal. Greg said nothing. Ethan walked out. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not ask for money. He did not ask for a blessing. Just, I thought you should know. That same evening, Pastor Greg Harmon called my mother. I know because Josie heard about it through Ethan. The conversation was brief. Deborah, we need to talk about Ethan and your daughter. Josie told me about the phone call the following morning. Ethan had overheard his father's side of the exchange through the thin walls of the church office. "Your daughter got my son tangled up in this mess," Pastor Greg had said. And my mother, who had spent 3 years agreeing with every word that came out of that man's mouth, pushed back for the very first time. "Excuse me, your son got my daughter pregnant." If Josie had not been so reckless. "Did not you dare? You stood at that pulpit and shamed her in front of the entire congregation, while your son was the father the entire time." "I did not know." "Neither did I, because you cut off every line of contact." I sat at the table and listened to Josie recount the exchange word by word. There was a strange satisfaction in hearing that my mother had finally turned on Pastor Greg, but it was not the kind of satisfaction that feels clean. It was the kind that surfaces when two people who destroyed your sister finally recognize that they were both holding the match. Neither of them apologized. Neither of them called Josie. Neither of them said we were wrong. Instead, my mother called my father. "We are going to that birthday party." Micah's third birthday was 5 weeks away. My mother had not spoken to her youngest daughter in over 2 years. She had never met her only grandchild. She had not acknowledged that Josie existed as anything beyond a mistake she wished to permanently erase. And now she was planning to walk into her grandson's birthday party as though she had been present all along. I found out the following morning when Aunt Carol sent me a cheerful text message. "Your mom is so excited for the party. What should she bring?" I did not respond for 12 hours. When I did, I called my mother directly. "I heard you want to come to Micah's birthday." "He is my grandson," my mother replied. "I have a right to be there." "You have no rights here. You surrendered them when you chose your reputation over your own daughter." Silence. I could hear her breathing steadily on the other end. I let the silence sit and expand. I have learned that silence is a tool most people do not know how to wield properly, and my mother was very much one of them. "If you come," I said, "you come entirely on our terms. You do not make a scene. You do not cry and make it about yourself. You do not bring Pastor Harmon. And you do not pretend the last 2.5 years simply did not happen." "Fine. And Mom, Josie does not yet know you are coming." "I will tell her. And if she says no, you do not come. No argument, no guilt, no casserole dish left on the porch. If she says no, you stay home." I expected resistance. I expected tears. Instead, she said simply, "I understand." I called Josie that same evening. I told her our parents wanted to attend the party. I told her clearly that it was her decision and nobody else's. She was quiet for a long time. I could hear Micah in the background, babbling enthusiastically about trucks. Then she said, "Let them come. Let them see what they missed." I told Ethan. He nodded slowly. "My father will find out. He will show up as well. Then let him." "Are you genuinely certain you want both sets of parents at a 3-year-old's birthday party?" I looked at the refrigerator where Micah's stick figure family portrait hung beside a grocery list and an overdue electric bill. 4 figures. None of them grandparents. Let them come. Let them see who showed up when they did not. Micah's third birthday party was held in the backyard of the small house I had purchased 6 months earlier. 2 bedrooms, a chain-link fence, a yard just large enough to accommodate a plastic slide, and a folding table draped in a dinosaur tablecloth. I had spent the morning taping streamers to the fence posts and blowing up balloons until my cheeks ached. Josie baked the cake, chocolate with green frosting this year, because Micah had decisively moved on from blue. Dr. Patrice arrived early with a wrapped gift and a bottle of sparkling cider. Garrett from Ethan's crew came through the gate carrying a bag of water balloons. 3 daycare families filtered in with their children, and by 2 in the afternoon the backyard sounded like a joyful emergency. At 2:20, a sedan pulled into the driveway. My mother stepped out first. She was wearing a blouse I had never seen before, pressed and buttoned all the way to the neck. She carried the white ceramic casserole dish in both hands. Same chipped rim. She walked it to the food table and set it down beside the cupcakes, the fruit salad, and a bag of cheese puffs. It sat there like a museum piece surrounded by playground snacks. My father followed. He stood at the edge of the yard with both hands buried in his pockets, scanning the scene the way a man surveys a room when he no longer knows where he belongs. He looked at the small house. He looked at the decorations. He looked at the dozen guests he did not recognize. Micah came sprinting toward me. "Auntie Mai, Who are those people? Those are your grandparents, baby. They came to see you. He studied them briefly the way a child studies a stranger in line at the post office, polite, entirely indifferent. Oh. Then he spun around and ran straight back to the water balloons. My mother's expression when her grandson did not recognize her. That was the first crack. And then Ethan walked through the back gate. He came through carrying a wrapped box tucked under one arm. Micah spotted him from across the yard and took off at full sprint, sneakers hammering the grass. Daddy! Daddy! He launched himself directly at Ethan's legs, and Ethan scooped him up with the effortless ease of a man who had been doing exactly this every single day for the past year. My father stared. He stared the way a person stares when a piece of a puzzle they were certain was missing suddenly appears in someone else's hands. That is the Harmon boy. His voice dropped to just above a whisper. That is Pastor Harmon's son. My mother was holding a serving spoon poised above the casserole dish. It stopped completely in midair. She did not move. She did not blink. She simply stood there, frozen, the spoon hovering motionless over a dish that nobody had touched. Ethan Harmon, my father said louder now. Pastor Harmon's son is the father. Yes, I said. My mother's voice came out cracked and hollow. How long has he been here? He came back a year ago. He is Micah's father. He has been Micah's father since before Josie walked out of your house and into the rain. The yard went completely silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from awkwardness. The kind that descends when every person present realizes they are witnessing something they will be describing for years to come. My father stepped forward. The pastor's boy. His voice fractured on the final word. That is the father. My mother set the serving spoon down. How is this even possible? We would have known. Someone would have told us. I looked at both of them. My mother in her carefully pressed blouse. My father with his hands trembling at his sides. Someone did tell you. Josie tried to tell you. She came to your dinner table, and you did not allow her to finish a single sentence before you threw her out. Josie stepped forward. She took Ethan's hand. Micah sat comfortably on Ethan's hip, entirely unbothered, licking frosting from his fingers. Mom. Dad. This is Ethan, your grandson's father. The man you never once gave me the chance to introduce. My mother's first instinct was tears. It was always her first instinct when she found herself cornered. Tears, a trembling voice, and a carefully constructed phrase designed to redirect the guilt. I had absolutely no idea. If you had known who the father was, if you had known his name was respectable enough, his last name distinguished enough, would that have changed anything? That is not fair, Myra. Does it? Does it change the 2 years you never once called? She flinched. That question landed somewhere deep, in the place where excuses wait before they are spoken aloud. She opened her mouth and closed it again. My father attempted to recover. He straightened his spine and reached for the measured tone he used at deacon meetings when conversations veered off course. This changes everything. We need to sit down as a family and have a proper discussion. You said she was no daughter of yours. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. You said those exact words. You rose from that dinner table and told your pregnant daughter she did not exist. Does knowing who the father is suddenly make her your daughter again? He had nothing. He looked at the ground. He looked at the sky. He looked toward the gate as though he were genuinely considering walking through it. My mother pivoted to her secondary strategy, the one where she repositions herself as the victim. You girls do not understand what it was like for us. The entire town was talking. The church was watching. We were utterly humiliated. Josie spoke. Her voice was quiet and completely steady. You were humiliated? I gave birth in a hospital room with no family present. My son did not know he had grandparents until 10 minutes ago. And you are standing here telling me that you were humiliated? Dr. Patrice moved closer. She said nothing. She did not need to. She was a witness, and she intended to remain one. Garrett stood behind Ethan with his arms folded across his chest. The daycare parents held their children a little tighter. Everyone was watching. The very audience my parents had always feared was finally assembled, and it was here. A car door slammed in the driveway. Footsteps crossed the concrete. Pastor Greg Harmon walked through the back gate wearing a navy blazer and pressed khakis, the same outfit he reserved for community events, hospital visits, and occasions that required him to look like a man firmly in command. He surveyed the yard, the streamers, the cake, the guests. His eyes found Ethan holding Micah, and something in his posture hardened immediately. "Son," he said, "let us go. This is not the place." Ethan did not move a single inch. "This is exactly the place. This is my son's birthday party." "You are standing at your grandson's birthday party, Dad." Greg turned to my mother. "Deborah, I told you we should have handled this matter privately." My mother said nothing. She remained standing beside the casserole dish that no one had touched. The serving spoon lay exactly where she had set it down. I stepped forward. I kept my voice level and unhurried, every word delivered the way I had been trained to deliver patient assessments. Clear, measured, stripped of any emotion that might obscure the facts. "You preached about sin from that pulpit while your own son was in love with my sister. He simply did not feel safe enough to tell you." Greg's face tightened. "I did what I believed was right. You did what was easy. Shaming a 23-year-old girl from a stage is easy. Listening to your own son is hard. You chose easy. And then you deleted her number from his phone and told him she had moved on. You lied to your own child to keep him away from mine." Margaret Harmon, Greg's wife, had followed him through the gate. She stood 3 quiet steps behind her husband. I watched her face carefully as she absorbed what I had just said. She had not known. Not about the deleted number. Not about the lie. She looked at her husband the way you look at a stranger wearing someone familiar's clothes. Greg turned and walked to his car without another word. Margaret did not follow him. She walked directly to Micah, knelt down on the grass, and said gently, "Hello, sweetheart. I am your other grandmother." "The letter," I said, loud enough for everyone present to hear. The crumpled letter written in blue ink that Josie never sent. 3 pages. She wrote your grandson's name before he had even drawn his first breath. While you were delivering sermons about consequences, she was quietly choosing to protect your son. The party did not end. It simply changed its shape. Greg's car reversed out of the driveway. The daycare children drifted back to the water balloons. Someone turned the music back on, a small playlist streaming from a phone speaker, and the backyard slowly remembered it was meant to be a celebration. My mother stood beside the food table. Her casserole dish sat untouched next to the half-eaten cupcakes and the bag of cheese puffs. Every other dish on that table had been served from. Hers had not. My father took her arm gently. "Let us go, Deb." She did not move immediately. She looked at Josie. "Can I hold him, just once?" Josie looked at me. I gave a small nod. Deborah lifted Micah with careful, tentative hands, as though she were holding something she had borrowed and was terrified of damaging. Micah tolerated it for approximately 30 seconds. Then he squirmed. He reached for Josie. "Mommy." Not a plea. Just a quiet statement of fact. He wanted the person he trusted without question. My mother handed him back. Her eyes were red. She whispered, "He has your father's eyes." I corrected her gently. "He has his father's eyes. Ethan's eyes." She stood there a moment longer. Then she turned. My father walked her carefully to the car. He opened her door. She got in. They drove away. The casserole dish remained on the table. Nobody picked it up. After they left, Josie exhaled. It was the kind of breath that sounds as though it has been held captive for 3 full years. Ethan wrapped his arm around her. Micah immediately smeared cake across both of their shirts. Dr. Patrice appeared beside me holding 2 small paper cups of sparkling cider. "You okay?" "I will be." I did not chase them to the car. I did not suggest we could work everything out. I did not offer a single promise. I let them go, exactly the way they had let Josie go, in silence. 2 months passed. The kind of months where things settle gradually into place, not with a sudden crash, but through a series of small, deliberate clicks. Josie and Ethan were married at the county courthouse on a Wednesday morning in October. I stood beside Josie as her witness. Dr. Patrice arrived with a bottle of champagne and a card that read simply, "About time." Micah wore a clip-on bow tie and attempted to eat the pen the clerk used for signatures. Josie completed her nursing program the following May. She graduated with honors, the first person in our entire family to earn a nursing degree. I sat in the third row of the auditorium and watched my sister cross the stage in a cap and gown she had paid for with 3 years of night shifts, unwavering grit, and a stubbornness our mother would never fully comprehend. Ethan and Josie moved into their own apartment 3 weeks later. 2 bedrooms, 10 minutes from my house, close enough that Micah could ride his tricycle over on weekends if the sidewalk cooperated. My father sent a card. No phone call, no visit. Just a card in a plain white envelope. Inside it read, "Thinking of you." Nothing further. No apology. No explanation. Just 2 words and a signature. I placed it on the refrigerator beside the grocery list. I did not call back. My mother quietly resigned from Grace Fellowship's women's ministry. She joined a different Bible study group that met at a coffee shop across town. Small changes, perhaps genuine, perhaps still performance. I could not determine which yet. Pastor Greg Harmon took a leave of absence for health reasons. The congregation was informed it was a sabbatical. Most people understood that it was not. Margaret Harmon visited Micah every other Saturday without fail. She brought cookies and a warm, uncomplicated smile, and never once mentioned her husband. She sat on the living room floor and built block towers until Micah knocked them down in fits of laughter. On the refrigerator in my kitchen, a new drawing had appeared. Still 4 stick figures. Myra, Josie, Ethan, Micah. But a small 5th figure had been added in yellow crayon. "That is Grandma Margaret," Josie explained when I asked. "No Deborah. No Frank. Not yet." "Maybe someday," Josie said. Maybe, I agreed. "When they earn it." It was a Saturday morning in late November. The house was still and unhurried. Micah was at Josie's. The coffee was hot. The kitchen carried the faint warmth of cinnamon from a candle I had bought purely for myself, a small, deliberate act of self-kindness. I opened the cabinet above the stove, the one I seldom used because it required stretching onto my toes. On the top shelf, tucked behind a box of expired tea bags, sat the white ceramic casserole dish. The original one. The one Aunt Carol had delivered 2.5 years earlier with the words, "From your mother." I had never returned it. Never used it. Never thrown it away. I lifted it down and ran my thumb slowly along the chipped rim. It felt lighter than I remembered. Smaller. The kind of object that diminishes in size once the person behind it stops looming so large. I placed it in the donation box by the front door. I did not need it anymore. I walked back to the refrigerator and looked at Micah's most recent drawing. 4 stick figures and 1 small yellow one. My stick figure had a wide, lopsided smile and what appeared to be either a cape or a pair of wings. It was genuinely difficult to determine which with crayon. I laughed. A real one, the kind that starts deep in your chest and rises slowly up through your throat and emerges sounding unmistakably like relief. I was not a hero. I was a sister. And that was always enough. The people who truly love you do not wait for you to be perfect before they appear. They appear first. Everything else, the apologies, the explanations, the understanding that arrives later, if it arrives at all, comes afterward. But the showing up is the part that matters most. That is the part my parents missed entirely. And that is the part one will never miss again. That is my story. 3 years of silence, 1 letter that changed everything, and a birthday party that nobody in our family will ever forget. If this reminded you to reach out to someone who once showed up for you, do it today. Do not wait. Share this video, leave a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.